Hello and welcome to Studio 275 for in the studio with Tim. Oh God, number nine this one is. And we're moving now off the subject of actually writing music, but to deal with the things, the instruments, etc., that you might need to write your music. And also a little byproduct of the composer's art, which is arranging and which is orchestration, are the two separate things. Arranging is where you take the bare essentials of a musical work that already exists, and you can simply just then turn that into an arrangement for different instruments. So you may, for instance, take an orchestral score, and from that orchestral score make what's called a piano reduction. You can cheat these days because lots of computer programs will do it for you. So that you may have a version where the whole score can be played by two piano players. That was very, very popular in the 1930s, 40s, where most of the major publishers published, especially Peters, published the symphonies of Beethoven, etc., as two piano versions, piano duet versions, or two piano versions. So that's one form of arranging. But another form of arranging may be taking a popular song, for which you would need the license to do so if it's still in copyright, and that's a subject which will crop up right at the end of our composing videos. If you are arranging a popular song, you may want to take, for instance, a song that is just voice and piano and turn that into an arrangement for a choir, or for a male voice choir, or for a ladies only choir, or for a string quartet. And that involves an amount of skill if you are actually arranging and not just transferring from one instrument to another. You may alter the rhythms, you may add extra counterpoint, you may uh, add a whole host of things which are your fingerprints. The piano rhythms may be completely different. There may be a piano part where there wasn't a piano part. And that arrangement will, even after proper permissions have been got to make the arrangement, which you don't need if the piece of music is in the public domain. In this country, that's 70 years after the death of the composer. But you may, and I'm thinking now that my male voice choir has a fair amount of arrangements of pieces of music that were 1920s and 30s Christmas songs, which arrange quite well into four-part harmony or even just two-part harmony. But a new copyright is created in the arrangement. And if you're registering music with one of the collecting societies, you will of course need to show that you have a license or permission to arrange it in the first place. Over the recent years, Hal Leonard has introduced the Arrange Me system, where they have cleared the rights to a vast amount of popular music songs, which you can then make arrangements of for choirs, for orchestras, for whatever combination of instruments that you have a need for. And these can be sold there on the Sheet Music Plus, Sheet Music Direct system, and you will retain a proportion of the royalties. Of course, this is the best way to do this. You can, of course, just go to a publisher yourself, the original publisher, the original owner of the copyright, and sort out the clearances yourself. But that can be a long and time-consuming business, and in some cases, costly. So to have this all done for you, and some composers say, well, why would I bother? I'm only going to get 10% of the royalties of the sales. I think if you realise the amount of work that is done and the platform on which people worldwide can find this music, I think that's a pretty good deal, really, because it would cost you more to sort out those rights yourself. So arranging can include, and some arrangers are wonderful in they have a style they will create new melodic counter melodies to go with the original melody, and or they may just have a specific sort of something that is, shall we say, something that is slow. Gershwin's "Summertime" comes to mind, which could be a slow song, but of course it's got so many recordings of it as actually a very fast song. Even the time signature can be changed. A whole host of things can be, and I think that what I've learned over the years is there are some arrangers of choral music who I trust. I trust Roger Emerson. I know that if I buy an arrangement from Roger Emerson's vast amount of arrangements, it is going to work. And if I've got 80 singers and I'm going to buy 80 copies, I'm going to spend the best part of £200. I therefore need to know that the £200 is well spent. Roger Emerson is one. A couple of others that Holy Hades, who's written a very fine book on arranging, choral arranging, that is. I know and therefore can trust these arrangements, and that cannot be said for all. So I would say if you're in the other end of arranging and you're buying them rather than making them, I think the same rules apply to making them as do to composing music. If you don't know about voices, then don't be making arrangements for voices, because there's a chance they may be wonderful. There's also a chance that they may not work, and anybody who's used to dealing with the voice will find that out pretty quickly. Um, I think what is also interesting is that the male voice choir that I conduct do an arrangement of Samuel Barber's song, Sure on This Shining Night. And it's a really nice arrangement. But my mixed voice choir, they do a Samuel Barber arrangement of Samuel Barber's song. And that is just so much more Samuel Barber than the male voice choir arrangement. Both are very nice. But the Samuel Barber one is, of course, arranged by somebody who knew the original source material, and it's interesting to see his arrangement. Alongside arranging, which we could go on to for a long time, and anybody who's interested in arranging could follow the link at the end, and we do lessons in arranging, just as we do in composing. The other thing that goes alongside a composer's skills, but not every composer would need this, is orchestration. The laying out of well, it can be an orchestration of of a piece that already exists. In other words, you could take a piano piece and you could blow that up into an orchestration, just as we already mentioned. You could take an orchestral score and reduce that to a piano reduction. So orchestration is the allocating of different instruments to different parts of your piece of music. And I think when I studied orchestration, it was originally through the Rimsky-Korsakov book, because I was captivated by the sounds that Rimsky-Korsakov could get out of the orchestra in Scheherazade, only to be slightly disappointed that he doesn't actually reveal any of those tricks in his books. And orchestration is also something that an organist would do, but the organist would do it by management of the instrument, by choosing stops, by choosing registrations. Different organists choose different registrations. Some composers are very, very clear about what stops they want for the piece of music, only to find, of course, that on your organ it doesn't have those stops. So I think perhaps maybe a more generalized version of what you want is probably preferable to being incredibly specific. And orchestration is an immense skill in itself, because no computer, unless you're going to spend an absolute fortune, is going to be able to recreate the actual sounds of the orchestra for you. And it is about storing up sounds. It is sometimes about listening to a score and thinking, my God, I really like that. And then looking at the score to see how that was made. I find it quite fascinating that Cesar Frank's symphony, which contains some absolutely beautiful musical material, but is orchestrated almost as if he had registered it at the organ. And it's a good symphony. It's a wonderful symphony, but it does strike you upon first listening that the orchestra somehow doesn't really sound like the orchestra normally sounds like. And then when you look at the full score of the symphony, you can see that he employs various orchestration techniques that are not the norm. I mean, pairing of instruments at the octave, or doubling of instruments at the unison, or adding a bassoon to a viola so that the bassoon will give the viola melody a little more of a bite. These are all sorts of things that come under the heading of orchestration. And it is a 3-year course on its own. Um, and again, that will give you the rules of orchestration as applied by composers through a certain period. In this case, it may be that you wish to break the rules to get your own specific sounds. And I've heard it said that Bach frequently pulled out stops on the organ that people looked at and thought, that is going to sound terrible. And it sounded wonderful. And I guess that some of Rimsky-Korsakov's orchestrations on paper look a little odd, but when you listen, they sound wonderful. And dovetailing is a sort of thing that we do with voices. Voice leading, we would call it. But Mendelssohn is, for example, an absolute master in the skill of having a melody. Let's say the melody is with the clarinet. As the clarinet becomes weaker or different sounding in its range, and that's something we'll deal with woodwind instruments in a couple of weeks, he doubles it with the flute. When the flute has become powerful enough to take over that melody, the clarinet simply drops out. But the listener gets this almost seamless transfer from one sort of sounding instrument to a different sounding instrument completely. I know that some of my early orchestrations, when played with an orchestra, were not remotely what I expected to hear at all. And there is no substitute for careful study of scores and listening to how people have done certain things. This is not going to be about orchestration, but later on we will do a short talk about orchestration. Next week we're going to look at the string family as individual instruments, and as an entity. And I'm going to recommend some pieces of music that you might listen to see how various composers have dealt with a string quartet or a string orchestra. And we're going to talk about the sort of playing techniques and writing techniques that are specific to strings and which you cannot replicate with woodwind. A common mistake of composers starting to write for instruments is that they treat the woodwind family like they treat the string family. But the string family is homogeneous. It sounds alike. The ear does not tire, and neither does the player, of extended string passages. But to try and make a woodwind group fit into that same sort of simplicity, shall we say, of writing and sound world is going to distress the ear over a great length of time. So, as usual, there might be something here that's of use to you or that sparks a discussion. And if so, that's great. Please comment, please subscribe. Um, Otherwise, we will see you again next week to talk about writing for string instruments. Bye bye.